people with addiction. Most of the people in Queensgate are waiting for trial. If we had faster process, if we had let poor people out on bond rather than locking them up, like the lady from Lincoln Heights a couple weeks ago who spent 16 days in jail because someone found a dead dog in her backyard. We have enough space for dangerous people, but right now those beds are being taken by the mentally ill, a guy named Benny who's been arrested 93 times for urinating in the park and various things like that. We can't afford to do that. We can use community service, marijuana law. Instead of locking people up, they can pay a fine, do community service. Not everyone needs to be locked up in an expensive jail.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go to the proponent side.
Well, actually, there's a lot of agreement in terms of who ought to be in jail and who should not be, but we can't get lost in the emotional appeal of what happened to the lady from Lincoln Heights. Nobody liked that situation, but it isn't typical. The reality is that we need the jail for all the reasons that you've heard David talk about. We need a jail simply because the current jail facilities we have are not sufficient for the populations of people that we do need to have in jail. We do have violent people and we do need space for them. But I'm the first to agree that there are people who have mental illness, there are people who have other issues that we'd like to see alternatives being used for. The good thing about the new program is that unlike what we currently do, we'll be assessing people. And we'll be able to learn why people are coming to jail, and we'll be able to learn ways to keep them from coming back. That's an extremely important part of this comprehensive safety plan that has never been in place before. The fact that the state of Ohio got out of the business of taking care of the mentally ill has impacted not only the city of Cincinnati, but all jurisdictions throughout this state. But that is not a reason not to go forward with this comprehensive safety plan. Issues like that are issues that we need to tackle, but let's not lose sight of the fact we need the jail. Every study tells us that we need the jail, and currently we not only need the jail, we have a decent place to put it. We've got a community that wants it. Who wants a jail in their backyard? I don't want one in mine, but we have a community that wants the jail. A few years from now, that space will not be available to us. This is never going to be cheaper to do. This is the optimum time to do it, and everyone will share in the cost.
Anyways, go back to the opponent side for a minute for rebuttal, if you like.
Mr. Young, there is a pretrial services that do the assessments. There's almost $1.9 million that from the county general fund that goes to pretrial services. So to say that there is no treatment and no assessment now is incorrect. Also, part of the problem is with the jail is the inefficiency on how it's running. One of the reports that Mr. Young talks about, the Vero report points out that 81% of the daily jail beds in 2004 was used by people there from the first day of booking to first day of court hearing. This number was only 37% in 1999. Just go back to the efficiency of 1999 and we don't need to expand the jail.
And I'll give the proponent side another minute for their rebuttal.
Sure. It's not simply the efficiency, but I do think we can address some of those issues. It's the sheer number of people coming through the system is far higher than it was even 5 years ago, which does clog it up. We have expanded it. I hear often from people frustrated the system, the defense of the status quo. The current pretrial services is clearly not enough to deal with it. So that's why in this plan, we have created a pilot program doing the interventions that Mr. Young talked about. We had a report today showing that what we're doing is working. The population that we intervened with through this pilot program just today, the rearrest numbers, and this is preliminary, but it looked good, the rearrest numbers on the folks that we're working with through this an intervention are lower than the general population that we try and work with. And if they are getting rearrested, it's taking them a lot longer to do so. So this is the kind of thing that's in the plan. It's actually working. And without the plan this November, those kinds of approaches we won't have the money for.
Okay, thank you very much. Just remind everybody, we are here live on September 24th. 825-3971 is that phone number. Live at waycross.org is the email address to get your questions to our panel here about Issue 27, the county jail sales tax referendum. Starting out with the proponents on this one, I know there's been several issues brought up. One of the issues that has been brought up by the minority commissioner, Mr. DeWine, concerning federal inmates being housed in the jail when we could be using the extra bed space for locals. talk to you a little about that, and some people may, for those who may be saying, hey, we've got bed spaces, but we're not using them for local here. If you can take no more than 2 minutes on that.
Okay, there are a lot of issues that come up, and people get, misled a little bit. When we hear they're federal inmates, they're federal because they are the most, oftentimes, the most serious criminals in our community who are guilty of something so bad it's a federal crime. Or they are people who committed a major federal crime elsewhere and happen to be living in Hamilton County. What we have is a program with the federal government where those people are, as quickly as possible, gotten off the streets, they sit in our jail for a time, and ultimately they are then sent on the federal system. So we can call them federal. The truth is these are among our most violent criminals. And the partnership we have with the federal government is what allows them to get them off the street and in and out and off to a more serious facility as quickly as possible. We cancel that approach, and the federal marshals who are working with our county law enforcement to pick these people up are spending half their time driving them to other counties rather than actually in our community finding them and getting them off the street. So as a public safety matter, this partnership is actually a very good thing. The second thing that it allows us to do is, unlike other criminals we house there, we actually get reimbursed by the federal government for keeping the people at our justice center. So we're not only getting the most violent criminals off the street, we're getting reimbursed for keeping them there. In the short term, it provides revenue for the county. In the long term, because in the next 5 or 10 years, like Butler County and Campbell County, we're going to be building more space than we need. This is for a long-term projection. We will, because of this arrangement, actually offset the costs of this facility by millions of dollars, making it the time of the tax even shorter than it would otherwise be. So to kick out and cut off the relationship, counties across this country do this because it just makes sense. We'd be very unique to cancel this relationship. It's good for public safety, but it also makes fiscal sense and helps the local taxpayers have less to pay in the long run for our criminal justice needs.
Go to the opponent side to respond for up to 2 minutes.
We do get reimbursed. We get reimbursed at a lower rate than the $57 it costs to house a prisoner in Hamilton County Jail from the federal government. So there is a loss. The other point that we're talking about is that I think almost everybody agrees that there are people in jail who don't need to be there. 63% of the Hamilton County Jail inmates are African Americans. That's the second highest next to Cuyahoga County. So to expand this is to expand an institution that has a significant racial disparity. And that is something that we cannot just wait and say, oh, well, they have some window dressing, some additional treatment, so we're going to ignore that. We are not. And when you're expanding the jail by 800 beds, putting few million extra dollars to treatment does not compensate it. There's already two jail programs for treatment, and when you add beds, obviously it follows that you have to add to keep proportionate with the treatment to add some more treatment. So it does not mean that there is an entirely different program. Really, the plan they have is a plan to make a plan. They have the dollar amount. They have not committed. If they are committed to treatment, I want to ask them how many treatment slots and how many treatment beds they are going to commit to. They have a dollar amount, but not a commitment to treatment slots.
Okay. Thank you. Go to the proponents for a minute up to a minute rebuttal.
Simply, one thing that is one of the emotional appeals against the comprehensive safety plan is this notion that somehow African Americans are going to be the ones always being locked up. Let's understand what's happening here. The jail in and of itself, when it is built, does not have the ability to reach out and grab any part of the population. People who come into a jail come in for all kinds of other reasons, but the jail has nothing to do with that. I'm the last to argue that African Americans are disproportionately represented in jail, but jail is not the reason for that. We have issues within our criminal justice system. We have issues within how police officers operate within given communities. And let's face it, much of the crime in African American communities is done on the streets where everybody can see it. So many things account for the large numbers of African Americans in jail, but jails are not the reason for that, and not building a jail will not cure that problem. We need to have the jail. Let's not lose sight of what a jail is for.
Thank you very much. And we'll go back to the opponent side.
Again, I'd like to say we have enough jail space now. It's full of people who don't need to be there. How many people in the community want to pay $60 a day for a marijuana smoker to go to jail? The last I looked, there were like 3,500 African Americans arrested for the marijuana law and 500 white people. So there is racial disparity. And the number of beds, it looks like to me that we have $19 million now for treatment, and we'll add $2 million to that if this passes. That's insignificant. So don't get the impression that we're going to go gangbusters on treatment programs. And the third thing is, I really object to criminalizing the mentally ill. Why would a mentally ill person have to go to jail to get treatment? We should do that in the community before they get involved in the criminal justice system. It's immoral.
Okay, thank you very much. We got our next caller on the line tonight. We have Dorsey right here from Forest Park. Dorsey, are you there?
Yes, I am.
What's your question for the panel, Dorsey?
I'm concerned about expanding the policing of into special neighborhoods like over the Rhine and other neighborhoods which maybe have special problems. But if we're going to have extra jail space, it seems to me we're going to talk about, we're adding prisoners.
Dorsey, I need what's your question?
The question is, how strong does, for or against are these people talking about it?
Okay, we'll start with the, actually, we'll start with the proponents on this one since it's part of your plan, and then we'll let you rebut. We'll go to the proponent side.
Now, do I understand the question correctly? The gentleman wants to know, are we in favor of expanding the sheriff's patrols?
That's the way I'm understanding the question
Okay.
as well.
Then my answer would be absolutely. We are in favor of doing that. We can see that it works. However, I also wanted to address something. The numbers of people being arrested in the city of Cincinnati on that marijuana law, I don't like the marijuana law either. But the reason we're seeing such high numbers of African Americans, let's not forget the Operation Vortex that is basically housed within Over the Rhine and is locking up an awful lot of people for that kind of stuff. And a lot of people are coming into contact with them. That's an abnormality. The numbers are way out of kilter, but the result that people in Over the Rhine desire is that their crime numbers are going down. That is happening. It's happening because of what Cincinnati police are doing. It's happening because of what the sheriff's patrols are doing. It is true that other communities would like to see the sheriff also patrol in their communities for the very same reasons, and no reason that we should not be able to do that. I think that a responsible government would certainly want to make available to everyone in the county who can use it whatever resources we have. Obviously, what the sheriff is doing is working. People have seen that, and they want it in their communities. They want to be safe also.
Go to the opponent side for up to 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's just driving it to another neighborhood. That isn't solving the problem. This is a Band-Aid solution, going around busting people and putting them in jail for a few days. That's not going to solve the problem. That's why we have 70% recidivism. And each time there's a crime, there's a new victim. So the goal of safety is not to see how many people we can lock up, but to lower the number of victims. So if we can figure out why these folks are doing this stuff, most of them are high school dropouts, and why not get them back to school, help them get jobs? A lot of them have PTSD, mental illness, addiction. We can change those behaviors, and then they won't be out doing this stuff anymore. But we do not have enough treatment programs in the community now, and it really rubs me the wrong way that we have to criminalize brain disorders like addiction and mentally ill for people to get treatment. Then they have this on their record. They can't get jobs because they have a felony or a misdemeanor on their record. It really is foolish. It sort of reminds me, remember, they build it and they will come. If we give these judges 800 more beds, they're going to fill them with somebody. And it's like a golfer. You have 10 or 12 clubs in your bag. You don't use a driver on every shot. We don't have to lock everybody up who commits a crime, like owing child support. Why on the earth do we lock up people who owe child support? They can't pay anything while they're locked up, and they may lose their job and their apartment. We can get them jobs and take money out of their pay. But locking up child support, I don't want to pay for that. I think it's really foolish, and it doesn't make me feel safe.
Go back to the proponents for up to a minute.
I want to rebut. It's very hard to debate because every problem that exists in the country is used as a reason not to support our plan. I haven't criminalized mental illness.